Hey, isn't the number 25 just so cool? Like, sure, 2, that's a good number, I like it. But then you put a 5 at the end? Then that's a really cool number. And guess what? There is a video game turning 25 today. And that video game just happens to be Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And it's my second favorite game of all time. So today, I'm going to be talking about it. The game picks up immediately where Ocarina of Time left off. He's exploring the Lost Woods, looking for Navi after she flew away. While exploring the woods, this creepy little guy named the Skull Kid shows up and knocks him off his horse. Steals the Epona, rides away. He chases down the Skull Kid, and the Skull Kid puts a curse on him that turns him into a Deku Scrub. So now he's got to travel through this twisty tunnel and make his way to the world of Termina. I almost forgot to mention, Skull Kid stole Link's Ocarina of Time, so he needs to retrieve that. He meets up with the creepy Happy Mask salesman, who tells him that if he can retrieve his Ocarina and the Happy Mask salesman mask that Skull Kid stole, then he can turn him back into a human. The moment Link exits the clock tower that he was in, he realizes something. And while the game never explicitly tells it to you, it allows you to experience it for yourself. If you look up, you can see that the moon has a face on it, and it seems really close to Earth. As time progresses throughout the 3 days, the moon falls, crushing and killing everyone. At the end of the first 3-day cycle, Link battles Skull Kid. While he couldn't retrieve the mask from Skull Kid, he could retrieve the Ocarina, so he uses the Ocarina of Time to play the Song of Time, which allows him to restart the 3-day cycle. This is the main gimmick of the game. He meets back up with the Happy Mask salesman, and in response to him not receiving the mask, but only getting the Ocarina, the Happy Mask salesman decides to choke him. Okay, then he puts him down and tells him that he's gonna turn him back into a human. And then he gets turned back into a human. However, now he has to go to the swamp, mountain, ocean, and canyon regions of Termina in order to summon the giants who are going to hold up the moon and prevent it from crashing down on Earth. It's the only way to break the cycle. The moon paints a very horrifying picture for the game. Like, it's a giant face that some people say looks angry, but it doesn't look angry. It looks scared of something. And also to just see all the members of Termina in denial of what's gonna happen, and slowly growing more and more scared of the end of the world, is really almost depressing to see. First, Link travels to the swamp, where everyone is angry. This is the home of the Deku Scrubs. And all of them are upset because the princess of the Deku Scrubs got kidnapped, supposedly by a monkey. And so they've decided they're going to be boiling the monkey in oil. However, the monkey needs to be saved. And the monkey really isn't a bad guy. He was just playing with the princess, and the princess actually got stolen by someone else. So the monkey leaves the job of rescuing the princess into Link's hands so that he can prove the monkey's innocence. When he rescues the princess is angry at his father for having been so quick to judge the monkey. And the monkey got released, and everyone was happy. The next part of the game takes place in Snowhead, which I have never mistaked for another location in a video game that has snow in its title, ever. I've never done that before. Head to the entrance of Snowden. Anyways, here he finds the undead spirit of the past Goron champion, Darmani. And Darmani just can't accept the fact that he's dead. So he decides to start bargaining with Link. Tells him that if he could play the song on his Ocarina that made him turn into a human, to turn him back into a living Goron, then he would save everyone in Snowhead. So he plays the Song of Healing, but throughout all of that bargaining, Darmani realizes that he's just not cut out to be the champion anymore. So he comes to acceptance with the fact that he has died. And he decides to pass on his spirit into a mask and give it to Link. This is your next transformation mask, and it allows you to play as a Goron. So Link stops the curse, stops the blizzard, and saves all of Snowhead. And he moves on to the next area. The next area, the Great Bay, is the home of the Zoras. The Zoras are all really depressed, for two reasons. One, you find the body of Mikau, the old guitarist to the band the Indiegogo's, washed up on the beach, and you turn him into a mask so that you can transform into a Zora. And also, Lulu, the vocalist of the Indiegogo's, lost her voice because the Gerudo pirates stole her eggs, and so you have to go to the Gerudo fortress to receive the eggs, and then, once the eggs hatch, they teach you a song called the New Wave Bossa Nova that summons a giant turtle that takes you to the next dungeon. The final area is Iconic Canyon, and while you're there, you meet the Stout Children Army, who do not understand that the Undead War has ended, so they need to accept the fact that the war is over and move on to do what else they're gonna do. And then, you also meet the Ghost Brothers, Flat and Sharp, one of them being evil, but they learn to accept each other as brothers. You also meet the Stalfo's captain, who learns to accept Link as the hero he is. And lastly, you meet Pamela and Pamela's father. Pamela's father being turned into a Gibdo, and Pamela learning how to deal with that grief. But Link eventually saves Pamela's father and turns him back into a human. But now, with all 4 giants freed, you return to Clock Town and climb up the clock tower, and you summon all the giants, and they hold the moon up. Then Majora lets go of Skull Kid, and decides to possess the moon. So you have to enter the moon to defeat Majora. In this fight, you learn that the Majora's mask isn't actually Majora's face, but rather his torso. That sounds like a fashion trend I can get on board with. Majora gets defeated, and a brand new day begins. The Majora's Mask no longer has its powers, but it's given back to the Happy Mask salesman, and Link heads off. However, Link didn't just leave Termina as the same Link that entered Termina, because Link entered Termina scared about Navi. He was looking for her. He was scared that he might never see her again. But then, he got a brand new outlook on life. After seeing the denial of the people of Clocktown, after seeing the Deku Scrub's anger, after seeing the bargaining of Darmani, after seeing Lulu's depression, and after seeing everyone come to acceptance with their fate, he has decided to stop looking for Navi and move on with his life. So he just goes home and enjoys his life as much as he can until the next adventure happens. And Link's subtle character development throughout this game is one of my favorite aspects of it. Link is normally known for not having that much personality at all. There are some games that break that trend, like Wind Waker or Skyward Sword. You don't normally think of Majora's Mask as one of those. But Link's story throughout the game is by far one of the best parts. Being a game about having to do specific things across a 3-day period, it is very clever the way that it uses the gimmick of only having 3 days to do everything. And that's funny, because if I had 3 days repeating over and over again, I wouldn't do anything with it. Because I have my own very specific routine. I do the same thing every day. I wake up, I brush my teeth, I say something stupid that goes along the lines of, "Hello, I am Lincoln," and then I go talk about stupid Nintendo games for the rest of the day. But Majora's Mask side quests are probably the best use of the 3-day cycle in the entire game. Here, let me explain a series of interconnected side quests. Okay, so you go to Romani Ranch on the first day, which is where you get Epona back, and you meet Romani, Malin's Termina persona. There, Romani tells you that an alien invasion is happening that night, and she needs an archer to shoot down all the aliens to protect the cows. So you go back there that night, and as she says, an alien invasion does happen, but you stop all of them and you save all the cows. As a reward, Romani's older sister, Cremia, offers you a ride with her on the milk wagon as they deliver the milk to the milk bar in Clocktown. As they're doing that, 2 bandits, who happen to be the members of the Gorman Troop, show up, and they start trying to shoot down all the milk to prevent it from getting its way to the milk bar. So if you shoot down all of the bandits, then she will reward you with the Romani Mask. Now that you have the Romani Mask, reset time and go back to the start. Then you'll be following this man named Gorman throughout Clocktown. He's the leader of the circus troupe known as the Gorman Troupe, the third triplet to the bandits who were chasing you earlier. Now, his show in the Festival of Time got cancelled, so he's really upset. And so he enters the bar, and now that you got the Romani mask, you can enter the bar as well. To cheer him up, you try playing him a lot of music that reminds him of what the Indiegogo's played when he was a kid that inspired him to enter the entertainment business. He then gives you the Gorman mask, which you take it to the Gorman brothers at the Gorman track, and they'll give you some mystery milk, which you gotta deliver quickly because it expires in 2 minutes. When you give it to him, he gives you a bottle, and that's your reward. Do you see my point? That was like 4 different side quests, but I could tell you that that was one side quest and you would believe me. Now, the obvious thing to talk about here is the Cafe and Angie quest, but I've already talked about that previously, so I don't think I need to here. Let's talk about some other stuff. For example, the Deku Butler. The Deku Butler quest is basically the same thing as the Dompe maze from Ocarina of Time, just slightly more involved. However, at the end, you learn that the Deku Butler's son ran away into the forest and went missing. At the start of Majora's Mask, you are told that you look like this mysterious dead tree that you find in the forest. Seeing as all other transformation masks are used by taking the soul of a dead person and turning it into a mask to put on someone, it is heavily implied that the Deku mask is created from Skull Kid killing the Deku Butler's son and turning it into a mask. And sure enough, at the end credits of the game, you can see that the Deku Butler is on his knees crying to the dead tree at the start, further enforcing the fact that just because Majora is gone does not mean that everything has been fixed. If you go to the Goron Cave and break one of the pots, out of it will come a rock sirloin that you can feed to a Goron known as Don Gero, who used to orchestrate frogs in a frog orchestra, but no longer can do that because all of his frogs are scattered across the world. So you go and you collect all of the frogs using the Don Gero's mask, and you get them all together in one place, and then you can orchestrate them to get a heart piece. That's pretty cool. You know, I would say that if you beat Breath of the Wild and you don't want to collect all the Koroks, that's fine. If you beat Ocarina of Time and you don't want to go out of your way to create the big Goron sword, that's fine. But if you beat Majora's Mask without 100%ing it, you have not beaten Majora's Mask. The side quests are what provide the game's world building, and it allows you to connect to the characters on a much more emotional level than you would have with any other game. I think that's pretty significant. So the year is 1998, and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is selling like crazy. Nintendo is changing the way players see 3D games for the second time on the same console. Now, Nintendo is currently working on a special device known as the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive. You see, the PlayStation is still really huge, and guess what? It accepts discs, and discs are much more powerful than cartridges, and that's just a fact. So, the Nintendo 64 needs to have something that allows it to run games as large as PlayStation games. So, they create the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive, and to advertise it, they want a new Zelda game. So, Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of The Legend of Zelda, opts for the idea of a DLC for Ocarina of Time that mirrors the world and makes everything more difficult. This at the time was called Zelda Ura, but when it was released to the GameCube in the future, it was renamed to Zelda Master Quest. Now, that's when Eiji Aonuma steps in. Eiji Aonuma was the developer of the dungeons in Ocarina of Time, and he says, what if we just made a sequel? We could take the ideas and base engine of Ocarina of Time, just do something new and creative with it. Now, Miyamoto was really upset by this, because he was really certain the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive was going to be the next big thing, and he really wanted this DLC to happen. But most of the development team said that they wanted to do the sequel more than the DLC. Now, Miyamoto was really infuriated by this, so he said, you know what, if you think you guys know what to do with my franchise so well, how about this? You have 1 year to make this game release. If it doesn't release in the year 2000, then it gets cancelled. And if you could make it release in 2000, then why don't we just let Aonuma become the producer of the franchise, why not? He obviously said that sarcastically, to which Eiji Aonuma said, okay. And then they got to work on making the game. That's right, this entire game was developed in 1 year. And they obviously needed to take a lot of inspiration from many places. First of all, They were curious how they could possibly get an entire game done in just that time span. So, they came up with the video game's gimmick, having to get stuff done in a very tight time span. They also needed to save as much time in any place as possible. For example, character models. They couldn't design a new character model for every single character in this game. They only had a year to work on this. What would be their solution to this? To answer that, we're gonna have to talk about parallel universes. They invented Termina as being an alternate universe of Hyrule, therefore making everyone in Hyrule have an opposite counterpart of them in Termina, allowing them to basically reuse a ton of character models, thus the game having 3 Ingo counterparts in it. Miyamoto was obviously really upset that they were actually trying to make a game in 1 year, especially seeing as his whole motto thing is, a game that is delayed is eventually good when a rushed game is forever bad. And so he was walking around supervising the department with this very creepy manner, clearly being annoyed at everything. The manner in which he was walking around really reminded them of the Happy Mask Salesman from Ocarina of Time. So thus the concept of it being about the Happy Mask Salesman was created. Aonuma knew that he wanted it to expand on several of the species from Ocarina of Time. One of those was the Deku Scrubs, and they were planning on having the game start out in a Deku Scrub area. So this game was actually taking a huge mental toll on him, seeing as he had to release an entire game in 1 year. So he had a nightmare of him being chased by Deku Scrubs, and then becoming a Deku Scrub. And he woke up and knew that that was the concept that he wanted from the game. Against all odds, today in the year 2000, the game released. Aonuma said that if he wasn't given the time restraint, he would have made a lot of changes to the game that in his eyes would have made it better. Thank God he was given time restraints, because Majora's Mask 3D was the worst. There's never anything added to the game that doesn't make it not feel like it's the same, or just straight up worse. As for the original Majora's Mask as it was, even created in just 1 year, it still managed to be an amazing game. Over the past 25 years, it's been one of the most beloved parts of the Zelda franchise, and I think it's gonna be the most beloved part for another 25. Also, they only had 1 year to make this game. Why is the cartridge gold and lenticular? Why was this a necessity?